Have you ever thought about vanishing off the map, leaving an entire country's police force in a panic, and returning days later as if nothing had happened? Agatha Christie did exactly that, and what looks like a mental health breakdown was actually the greatest masterclass in marketing and personal rebranding the world has ever seen. In this video, we will reveal how a reserved woman transformed her own pain and betrayal into a billion-dollar empire that survives to this day, outperforming giants like Coca-Cola in global recognition.
If you think you know what focus and discipline are, prepare to be humbled by the queen of crime. We're going to show you why she is the ultimate example of how to use the worst of humanity to generate prosperity and an immortal legacy. Stay until the end, because I'm going to give you the exact formula she used to read people's minds. A persuasion tool so powerful, it can change your career and your finances this very week. Are you ready to discover the secret behind the little gray cells, or will you continue to be just another pawn on someone else's board? Look, Karen, Agatha Christie is a massive slap in the face to this generation that thinks having a purpose means posting motivational quotes on Instagram while their room is a total mess. This woman was a machine of discipline and focus. While people today get lost in their feeds, she used self-knowledge to turn traumas and mundane observations into gold mines. She didn't wait for the muse of creativity to arrive with tea. She sat down and wrote because she had a mindset of steel. If you want to apply this today, stop following stagecoaches and go read her autobiography or watch the movie Agatha. There you'll see that resilience isn't about taking insults. It's about vanishing for 11 days when your husband cheats just to watch the world burn and then coming back like nothing happened.
Vanishing is the understatement of the century, right, Daniel? She pulled a prank on Scotland Yard that would make the Nike marketing department drool with envy. That is pure inspiration with a touch of mild psychopathy. She had a very peculiar spirituality, an unshakable belief that order must be restored, whatever the cost. For today's youth, the practical example is simple. Use your pain as fuel for your developing and not as an excuse to procrastinate on the couch. If life gives you lemons, make an undetectable poison, metaphorically of course, and write a bestseller.
Undetectable poison? I love how she used her pharmacy knowledge to have a technical precision that humiliates any current crime series writer. Her optimism was believing that no matter how clever the criminal was, the human mind, the little gray cells, would always win. It's the kind of awakening that's missing today, understanding that intelligence without method is just noise. Want to be productive? Use the Pomodoro technique or any time management tool, but with the fury of someone who needs to finish a manuscript to pay the bills, just as she did in the beginning.
And speaking of winning, let's jump into a quick controversy here, Daniel. Do you think her disappearance was a real mental health breakdown or a masterstroke of brand leveraging? Because nowadays, every influencer pretends to take a break just to come back with a sponsored post. I argue it was pure survival instinct and unconscious marketing. What does the audience think? Comment below. Was she a victim or a genius of manipulation?
Oh, Karen, the world belongs to the clever ones, and she was the queen of the board. This personal progress, going from a betrayed woman to the greatest writer in history, shows that success is the best revenge. But make no mistake, to reach this level of transformation, she had to be colder than the English weather in December. And speaking of coldness and observing people, you can't imagine how she used that to lead the publishing market without ever raising her voice. Karen thinks being a great leader is about shouting in boardroom meetings, but Agatha Christie proved that true leadership comes from those who speak little and observe the gears turning. She was a master of silent persuasion. She didn't need a megaphone. She used active listening to fish for human weaknesses and then throw them onto the paper. You know that friend who pretends not to be listening but knows all the gossip? That was her, except she monetized it while you just waste time. If you want to improve your communication, watch the movie Death on the Nile, either the 1978 version or the new one, and focus on Poirot. He doesn't interrogate, he negotiates truths. It's high-level negotiation technique applied to human chaos.
It's the famous profitable gossip, right, Daniel? But let's talk about proactivity. Agatha didn't stay waiting for recognition to knock on her country house door. She traveled the world, joined archaeological digs in Iraq and Syria, and used this collaboration with experts to give her crimes veracity. This is real empowering, leaving your comfort zone to expand your repertoire. Today, if you want to be someone, it's not enough to just network at LinkedIn events. You need empathy to understand what motivates people, whether to sell a product or to avoid being the next victim of a plot twist in your career.
And speaking of victims, she was surgical when creating characters. She understood human behavior so well that her works are practically a social enabling manual. She knew that most people are driven by ego or money. Want a practical example of how to use this today? Read Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, but through Agatha's lens. Learn to hear what people are not saying. Nonverbal communication says much more than any rehearsed speech from a tech startup CEO who promises to change the world but can't manage their own ego.
Speaking of CEOs, Daniel, let's head to our controversy of the day. Agatha often portrayed lower classes and foreigners in a very, let's say, acidic and stereotypical way. This leads us to the debate: globalism versus nationalism. On one hand, she was the essence of conservative British pride. On the other, her stories conquered the world. Nowadays, being nationalistic like her is seen as a crime by some and a virtue by others. What do you prefer? A strong, closed cultural identity or a borderless global mix that sometimes dilutes the essence? Leave a comment if you're on team British tradition or world without borders.
I'm on the team that makes money, Karen, and Agatha made plenty by being exactly who she was. She had a providing of insights that no one else had because she didn't try to please everyone. The secret to her personal promoting was the exclusivity of her gaze. She didn't offer mindless stimulation. She built a narrative where the reader felt smart trying to crack the mystery, even if she made a fool of them in the end. And that ability to keep people engaged through mystery is what's missing today, where everything is served chewed up and bland. Talking about ethics with Agatha Christie is like trying to disarm a bomb with a toothpick. You know something is going to blow up. She had a character shaped by an era where right was right and wrong ended on the gallows, without much room for today's therapeutic whining. For her, justice wasn't a suggestion, it was a biological necessity to restore the balance of the universe. She wasn't afraid to show that even the cleanest person in high society could have the integrity of used toilet paper. If you want to understand radical responsibility, read The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. The way she throws the guilt in the face of the one we least expect is a lesson that no one escapes their own choices.
True, Daniel, and her transparency was almost cruel. She didn't sugarcoat it. If a character was a scoundrel, they got what they deserved. But let's be honest, she also had her pet prejudices that today would make Twitter, or X if you prefer, have a nervous breakdown. This is a practical example of how context changes, but core values of honesty should be perennial. To apply this to your current life, try being the detective of your own morality. Are you being fair to others, or just following the herd to look virtuous on social media? Watching the BBC series The ABC Murders is a great exercise to see how the past and prejudice test our character all the time.
The problem is that today, people think having ethics means following the company's compliance manual. Agatha showed that true morality appears when no one is looking, or when you think you've committed the perfect crime. She used poetic justice to say that evil always leaves a trail, even if it's just a strand of hair or a grammar mistake. It's a masterclass in attention to detail. If you want to level up your game, start being rigorous with your own responsibility. Don't blame the system, don't blame the algorithm. Look in the mirror and see if you're not the villain of your own story, like many of her characters who thought they were the heroes of their own distorted narrative.
And speaking of distorted narratives, Daniel, let's hit the controversial point: retributive justice versus rehabilitation. In Agatha's stories, the killer rarely got a second chance. It was the end of the line. Today, we live the debate about whether the penal system should punish or recover. Agatha would probably laugh at the idea of re-socializing some of her coldest villains. What about you? Should we be relentless with those who break society's rules? Or do you believe everyone deserves a reset? Comment below if you're Poirot, Law and Order, or if you believe in nuances that the Queen of Crime would solemnly ignore.
I think she preferred a good literary hanging to close the book on a high note, Karen. This firmness of values is what gave her such artistic integrity. She didn't change the ending to please progressive editors of the time. She kept the character of the work intact. This lesson of not selling out for cheap approval is what separates icons from seasonal influencers. And if you think she went too far in morality, wait until you see how she turned that rigidity into an empire of absurd profits in the next topic. If you think success is hitting sales targets at the end of the month, Agatha Christie is laughing at you straight from her mausoleum. This woman didn't just write books, she built a legacy that only trails the Bible and Shakespeare in sales volume. This isn't luck, it's elite productivity. She understood that prosperity comes from creating a replicable and scalable system. While many creative people starve because they don't know how to sell what they produce, Agatha was a strategic income source genius before that term even became a digital marketing trend. She turned crime into an inexhaustible source of wealth, proving that real growing requires consistency, not just peaks of genius.
And her recognition didn't come from pats on the back by literary critics, Daniel. It came from a public that bought millions of copies because she delivered a product with a quality guarantee. She is the perfect example of brand sustainability. Imagine Apple. You buy an iPhone because you know exactly what you're going to get. With Agatha, it was the same. An impeccable mystery, an eccentric detective, and a solution that makes you feel like an idiot for not seeing it sooner. To apply this today, focus on generating consistent results instead of trying to reinvent the wheel every week. Your progressing depends on your ability to be a reliable solution to someone's problem.
Exactly. And look at the leveraging she did. Plays like the mousetrap have been running for decades, generating capital multiplying without her having to lift a finger, which would be hard given she's dead. That's what I call true financial independence. Want a practical tip? Study royalties and copyrights. Don't just sell your time. Sell something that can be reproduced while you sleep or while you travel to an excavation in Egypt. Use tools like Notion to organize your projects and ensure every hour worked today builds a brick for your empire tomorrow.
But let's get to the final controversy about prosperity: inheritance versus meritocracy. Agatha left a colossal fortune to her descendants, ensuring generations lived in luxury thanks to her effort. Many today argue that large fortunes should be heavily taxed to avoid moneyed aristocracy, while others say the state has no right to touch what you built with sweat and ink. So whose side are you on? Should Agatha's money stay in the family or fund public libraries for those with nothing to read? Speak your mind in the comments. I want to see the sparks fly.
While they argue, her investment in herself keeps paying off. She never stopped learning, and that is the biggest millionaire lesson you can take. Your greatest asset is your mind and your ability to produce under pressure. Her purpose was to entertain, but the byproduct was a mountain of cash and a name that will never be forgotten. Now, if you want to know how she started each of these successful journeys to grab the attention of billions, well, we need to talk about the gateway to it all. So, the moral of the story is simple. If Agatha Christie could turn public betrayal and a mysterious disappearance into a literary empire that earns billions, what is your excuse for your productivity being in the gutter? She wasn't a superhero. She was a woman with discipline and an unshakable character who decided to be the author, not the victim of her own life. How is your intrapersonal life doing? Are you just watching time fly by, or are you using your creativity to build a legacy that outlives you?
Stop procrastinating and start acting with the technical precision of an Agatha Poison. Financial independence and success don't fall from the sky. They're built with focus and strategy. We want to hear from you. If your life were a Queen of Crime book, would you be the detective who solves everything or the victim who never saw the blow coming? Write in the comments, from which city are you watching this video? We want to see how far Agatha's poison has spread.
Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, unless you prefer to keep living in the mystery of why your life isn't taking off. Oh, and if you want to start building your own success scene, you can buy Lego and other exclusive products through the link in the first comment. After all, every great master needs their pieces to plan the next move. See you at the next case.